Now, okay, guys, we're started. What's up?
What's up?
Who have we got here today?
An interesting cast of characters
Yeah,
for
I know,
sure.
right? So,
People that haven't been in the same room in a decade.
so
Oh
we
my
have
gosh, it's been too long.
we have Lean, Sobit, Grifter, and Nemus. So I have you guys here because, um, honestly, I haven't seen any of you guys before, so this is a good time for me to meet you. I guess I'm on the board for this hackerspace now, and I better like meet some of the people who used to be into it. Except for Nemus. Nemus is still here. How did that happen? I don't know. But these are the kind of questions that I want to get in today. Today, I have so many questions. Honestly, I'm probably just gonna make them up because again, I care about this, and so this is me asking you guys about the hackerspace, about where it came from, and maybe somebody can laugh at us while we do it. Um,
Sounds perfect.
before we start, I want you guys to each spend like literally 30 seconds to just say your name, and how you got involved in the hackerspace. So, because again, most people won't know who you are. We'll start um, with Lean.
Lean, aka Kevin, uh, really didn't start in the hackerspace. Hackerspace didn't exist, but it was, I think, around like DEF CON 17. Started getting together, having some conversations, and that ultimately led to a couple of years of development and turned into what it is today.
Awesome. Sobit.
So Sobit was the first attempt at a hacking group in Utah by me, which was kind of in between a bunch of other things that were going on. So Sobit is an acronym. It's a Society of Beer and Information Technology. We used to meet at Charlotte Square once or twice a month and drink beer and talk about working in IT. That was the mid 2000s when we were doing that. And we started doing some more security related things, started getting closer tied to DEF CON, and DC groups came up, and then Danny, who's not with us today, was involved in the DEF CON group, and that kind of turned into DC801,
Mm-hmm.
and then Hackerspace came after that. So
Sweet. Grifter.
Yeah. So when I originally moved out to Utah, I didn't attend any like hacker meetups or anything like that. This was in the late 90s, right? And when I decided to finally start heading to the local 2600 meetings, they were held at the ZCMI food court in Salt Lake.
what is this place you speak of?
Yes, it has been torn down. That's how you know you're old.
We've hit a vintage when the buildings don't exist.
Exactly. But we were called 2600 SLC back then. I took over the meetings in February of 2000 and actually created DEF CON groups with Russ Rogers out of Colorado Springs in February of 2003 and started DEF CON groups. And so DC801 and DC719 are the first two DEF CON groups. And ran them for years, and basically until I had my first kid, and then it got to be too much to try to chase people down to try to do talks and take all the pictures and update the website and do all the different stuff when you have a baby.
Oh, geez, yes.
Yeah, so I happened to meet Metacortex Danny at the time, kind of handed the torch over to him, which is how I met Sobit from, I think the meetings when I first met you, they were at, what university was it? It was at
Broadview.
Yes. All right. So I don't remember what year that was, but that's when I met Sobit and Nemus and Lean, and those guys started kind of coming together. That's when I guess the groups kind of started to meld into something, and I think it was actually Danny and I were talking about the idea of doing a hackerspace, and he was like, "Oh, Sobit kind of was talking about doing that as well," and he was like, "Oh, and I think Lean had been wanting to do it for years," and it was kind of a thing where.
Sweet. Okay, I'll have you go into that in a little bit more detail later down. But awesome. And then we're just gonna finish off with Nemus.
I think So yeah, so I've been going to DEF CON for years. My first DEF CON was DC15. I went for years. I dragging my friends down. You know, they'd go to Vegas, do Vegas stuff. I go to DEF CON. And then I finished my bachelor's degree, and during that time, I saw this DC groups thing advertisement, and so I decided to start attending the meetings. And at those meetings is where I met Jeremy and Danny and Lean, Sobit and Lean. And then that just so happened to be the right time and the right place, because a couple months later is when they started up the hackerspace.
Sweet. Cool. All right, cool. So we got pretty much a crew of people who've been here. I mean, one of you mentioned 1990s. Just so you know, I was born in the 1990s. So that
Excellent.
is long before I could even, use a toilet.
We're
But
not sure we can still, but don't worry about it.
but I want to know about that. Like, so it sounds like, from what I understand, it started almost as a DC26 group, right? And from my understanding, there's something to do with. I'm just going to tell you what I know about the hackerspace, and I just want to hear the history. I just want to hear you guys talk to me and kind of like catch everyone up to speed about where we came from, how we got there, and kind of the people that made DC801 and 801 Labs where they are. So I guess we started at a 2600 group, right? That's kind of like the earliest we can remember. Um,
The
Grifter,
hackerspace itself, like that was Sobit. I think you were the catalyst for that, right?
right?
Because you knew decaf, and I think like that's a huge
Yeah.
part of the history of 801 Labs.
It's a funny little intertwining story because Neil did DC801. I mean, DC801 as an entity is based off DEF CON groups. That's all Neil. That came from Neil. It was dormant for a while. I was trying to do a different IT group, and I came back from a DEF CON 18 or 19 or something and said, well, let's do a DEF CON group, and then people at least know what the hell it is, and reached out to the person who owned the domain name, which was MetaCortex.
Right.
Meta was living in San Diego at the time and promptly ignored my email for about 6 months. And so I just said, well, fuck it. I'm just going to do this anyway. I don't really need the domain. I'll just start. And the thing that was unique is that I was running IT ops at a college, and I had as many labs as I wanted at my disposal. And so we had a place that we could just set up shop. And so myself and a few other people just started building CTFs, and we would do CTFs. We had the FBI come in and do some presentations. We did lockpicking one time. I remember real early on, Grifter showed up and brought a ton of his lockpicking stuff. I remember this because he's like, I'm Grifter, and I wrote a book.
And I wrote a book.
But yeah, it was all of us kind of hanging out at the college on a part-time basis. And
what college was this?
Robb University.
Okay.
Which is kind of sugar house-ish. It was a film production school at that campus, but it was a nationwide group of colleges. It's kind of like a DeVry or an ITT or something. And Devin 4 started coming to those from Orem, and really was a driving force behind Hackerspace, because he had been doing the transistor down in Orem,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted us to extend our own version of that in Salt Lake. And so he was the main catalyst behind the dedicated space. But that wouldn't have happened without DC801, and it wouldn't have happened without us doing the CTFs at the college, and kind of this whole group just getting together pretty organically, just because we like to play with stuff.
Right. So we could probably talk for hours about all the groups that came into building this hackerspace that started off. But when was the first time that you guys decided as a group, we're going to spend money every single month and have a building where we're going to do this?
That was Devin 4 sitting in my living room, bullying us into signing a lease on the shitty little space in Trolley Square.
So who's the one who bullied you?
Devin 4, decaf.
Decaf.
Absolutely.
What had happened at that time? We had I think Jeremy had posted on the DEF CON group saying, hey, we're going to start this up again. And I came back from DEF CON, eager to find a local group. And Devin 4, decaf, I'm going to refer to him as decaf moving forward. It had been running the transistor for a while, and he'd actually been interviewed locally a couple of times, and he'd been doing a lot of things. But it was a maker space mostly, and he'd always had an interest in having a hackerspace. And so the original idea was, hey, the transistor needs to expand. We don't really know how to expand. We like security, so maybe we expand into Salt Lake with DC801 as an organization where it's security focused. We can turn it into a true hackerspace. Because at that time, we really loved the 303 idea, DC303's hackerspace. They had a lot of great things going on there. And we kind of wanted to mimic a lot of that, but we wanted our own flair and flavor on it. And so Decaf was just like, hey, we need to do this. And I think all of us sat in Jeremy's living room and said, this needs to be downtown Salt Lake, because that's just the core of the culture. And Grifter, that was you saying, we really need to make this a cultural, downtown kind of underground culture. And that it literally was underground. So
it literally was underground. The first,
no metaphor.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it came. And it's like, all right, well, we need to wrap a business around this. We need to be somewhat professional, and who's going to pay the bills? And so the five of us kind of looked at each other and said, okay, we're all going to commit financial resources to paying the bills every month if we cannot get membership. And Decaf was able to help financially in that regard as well, because he had an established kind of financial stream going through the transistor to be able to contribute to that. He also had a lot of knowledge on how to get things jump started.
He was also fearless about doing stuff like that. Like he would just hope for the best. I mean, he was just completely fearless about going out on a limb, where I think some of us are a little more conservative in how we would map that. If it was left to Kevin and I, or Kevin Lance and I even, I don't think it would have ever happened. It was Devin was the guy that was just like, we got this, we can do this in our sleep. I've got enough money to cover it. Don't worry about it. And he didn't have he was just all charisma and bravado, and somehow we kind of figured it out along the way, which is a lot of Nemus is doing.
Well, he was willing to lose money for the community, and that's something to really highlight. He wanted the community so bad that he was willing to do whatever it took.
Yep.
And so the five of you who did this, was it you four and
Meta and Decaf?
Meta
and Decaf.
Yeah.
Sweet. So you guys are the ones who signed the lease.
Yeah, I mean, we were all sitting on Jeremy's couch, which was downtown Salt Lake, which ended up being like a within walking distance of the Trolley Square hackerspace that we had. And Decaf, Jeremy said, Decaf said, oh yeah, we'll do this. It's no problem. At that time, I was actually a transistor member of the Darlington hackerspace, which I only went to like once or twice, but I decided to become a member of that hackerspace just because, it's something I wanted to happen. I went to DerbyCon that year and saw, the Louisville hackerspace, and it was really, had 3 levels and all these projects and stuff. I was like, that's something I want to do in Salt Lake. And so that was kind of what inspired me to get really involved and contribute, even though like the Darlington location, the transistor was like, it was in some company's attic. It was really weird because you had to walk through like office, a company's office space, and you don't even know if you're supposed to be or not.
I was gonna say, did the company know you guys were there?
Yeah, I don't know because
that was the company that cut the arcade cabinets for us. That was the primary business.
Well, no, that was the kid. That was the kid who worked for that company.
Yeah.
Who happened to have a 6x10 mill.
Yeah, that they let him store there, and I guess they let him let us hang out in their attic, which was just a bunch of like cubicles and a giant mess of Ethernet cables, if all I remember.
I had a cube.
It's still
they also hosted a lot of LAN parties there too, and so I was a member of that as well. And that's where it was like, we really want to branch out in the Salt Lake area. So, but to keep in mind though, like we all looked at Nemus when we were ready to sign these papers, and we were like, hey dude, you're gonna run the finances. And
he still does.
And he still does to this day.
Poor Nemus.
Know who I was at that time when you guys signed the lease. I think you had met me maybe twice.
And we almost gave you a heart attack, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something to point out too, is that like when everybody came together to do it, like some of us knew of each other, some of us knew each other from like a couple of meetups and other things, but there was a lot of kind of like taken a step on faith there where we're like, man, I hope these guys are as passionate about doing this as they all say they are, because like we're all about to like throw money in this little pile or like come together and dump like resources. Like the thing, like it was once we had the space, it's like great. Now we have a space, and you go down these stairs and into this little basement area, and we have a space, but there's literally nothing in it, right? And so we're like, okay, let's just start bringing stuff from home. And
we did negotiate for the Red Bull fridge. I do recall.
Yeah, we did.
That was part of signing the lease.
But we literally were like, okay, like I was like, I'll bring a bunch of lockpick stuff. I have a bunch of books that we can add to a library. Somebody was like, I have a projector. I think Meta said like, oh, I've got like some servers that I can bring. Nemus, you brought a bunch of equipment stuff as well. Somebody had a NAS that they brought as well. Like literally just all of our, like, we're like, okay,
a lot of that was
in this all spot
too, because I, through those Broadview meetups, I became better friends with Decaf and chatting on IRC. And so Decaf he'd spend hours looking at like surplus and resale and state resale, and he's like, hey, you need to get this for the hackerspace.
Public surplus, that was his go-to.
Yeah.
Public surplus. So a lot of times it was like, hey, go get this. And because usually I would be the person to go get it because I was the person with a truck. So
Still the person with a truck.
yeah, still the person with a truck. I think it's a requirement to be a board member is you have to have a truck.
Yep.
Sweet. So, where was this first building you guys set up? You said it was underground, but like
over by Trader Joe's.
Yeah, Trader Joe's.
Yeah, it's basically on the other side of the Trader Joe's, closer to 7th East.
I think the place is called Modern. Is it Modern Display or Modern Design?
Yeah,
Modern
it's
Display
the
is a
alley.
different building around the corner, but it's right there. Yeah.
So when you go up to pick up your order from Modern Display, you drive into that little tiny parking lot, which we only had like 2 spaces for.
Yeah, that was always fun. I literally, my first time to the hackerspace, like the first time going to see the space, like I don't remember who had the keys or whatever, and it was like, oh, we're gonna go see it. We go inside, and I had parked over in the other parking lot, and I got a boot put on my car. It cost me $75 to go see the hackerspace for the first time, and I was like, all right, a note to members in that parking lot, like so.
Trader Joe's was pretty ruthless if we parked on that side. That was an ongoing problem for sure.
So not only was it in an alley, it was also underground in and out.
Yeah. The original space was an old web development company that had gone out of business, and so it was open ceiling, all painted black, and polished concrete floors. And it was basically just a big open room with a small office attached to it, and then a little storage room. It was a very modest space. About 1,000 square feet, I think.
1,000 square feet. That's pretty small. That's pretty dang small.
I mean, it's big for a 1-bedroom apartment, but small for a commercial enterprise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it was small. Like it was big enough when we didn't have any members, right? I mean, like it was just like mostly the same crew of us and a couple extra people showing up for meetings and stuff. And then, basically the reason that we knew we had to move when we eventually got to that point was because when we were having meetups, it would get so crowded, it would just get hot. Like, that like road trip heat where it's just a bunch of hot bodies in a space and you're like, this is gross. that LAN party funk. But we were like, okay, we probably need to start looking for another space. But that wasn't until, how long into it was it? A year and
2 years?
Years?
Yeah.
2 years?
It was a bit.
Yeah.
How often did you guys meet back then?
We were there. Well, a few of us were there multiple times a week.
In Salt Lake, so I was down there quite a bit. At the time, I was like in and out of an office in Salt Lake, and so I was down there a lot. But official stuff, I don't know, a couple times a month.
Yeah, and we had a bunch of different stuff going on in that space. We would host all kinds of random events. It was always more of a classroom space for me, just because that's kind of my background and what I was familiar with. I taught a SANS class there that actually Nemus took.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, we did stuff like, I mean, when we had something like that going on, it was once or twice a week.
It's pretty sweet. So once or twice a week, you're meeting in this small room. About how many people would you have show up? Okay, Lean going on with the fancy background.
This is
Yeah,
this
that's
is the
the old
space.
space. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Projector. Danny
But that's
over here
literally
presenting.
from the corner of the room, so that's the full space.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, no, that's a very generous view. That's pretty awesome. Actually.
Sometimes we'd have like every once
Oh,
in a
there's
while
Danny.
we'd hit the right events, right timing, and we'd get like a ton of people. And then other times it was just me and Danny. Like we'd plan an event and it would just be me and Metacortex there. And then the thing is we'd still like hold the event, but we would spend most of the time talking about how we could better get more people and provide better. And a lot of it came down to just being consistent. Over time, people, I think, started to recognize like, hey, this is a thing. It keeps going. So I think a lot of times people saw the events like, oh yeah, I want to go to that, but that just wasn't ingrained into their habits yet. It was like, oh, that's a thing I go do. It's like, oh, that's a thing I should go check out. And then when more people started checking it out, and more people started showing up and hanging out and stuff, it became more consistent with larger groups. So sometimes we'd have like a ton of people, and sometimes it was just one person would show up and be like, this place is lame, look around, say hello, and then you can see in their face like, yeah, this place is lame, and then leave.
Yeah.
We don't want you anyways, right?
That's right. Get out of here.
Yeah. So what point do you guys say, we're going to go have a DEF CON party? Like whose fault is that?
Oh, that's all meta.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's definitely Danny. Like he wanted
yeah.
bad.
Meta's thing was always.
I think the first year it was like $5,000 or $6,000 out.
Yeah. The kicker, the whole deal was we wanted to get into the ninja parties all the time, and that was everyone wanted to go to the ninja parties, and so that became a thing. And so Danny was very okay. We're going to get into the ninja parties year over year, and then the final year that they did the ninja party, oh wow,
Yeah.
wow,
the ninja telephone.
Was that the last year? I think that was the last year. So so the last year. And I think it was due to Barcode's condition, and then they just kind of were wanting to do the last hurrah for DC20. And Grifter, you could probably talk more to that. They spun up a whole cell network, and you always had to get an invite to the Ninja Party. And it's usually like an electronic badge. That's what started the whole badge life thing, was Ninja always had badges that they would hand out as their special invites. And so the last year, they handed out a freaking cell phone as the badge, which had
on the floor with the antenna and everything. So
yeah, they spun up their own cell network that you could communicate with each other through these cell phones. And so when that happened and DC20 ended, the first thing out of Meta's mouth was, okay, well, if there's no Ninja Party DC21, it's got to be a DC801 party. That was the first thing he said. And so it was immediately like, well, you can't just come in and just take over what they've built for years since the Alexis Park days and everything else. So how are we going to do this? We're just a small DC801 group. We don't really have a mass following. And Danny's like, I don't care. We're just going to do it. We're going to find a suite and we're just going to do it. And at that year, he forked over a lot of money to kickstart that thing, because he loved the atmosphere of what the Ninja Parties brought. It was always a very close culture of, I get to meet people I've never thought possible. I get to have conversations with people in the industry that I never thought possible. He wanted to keep that culture alive.
To be fair, too, one of his things was that the Ninja Party required an invite, and because it was so many people and everybody wanted the badge and everything, it became like, at least to some people, it was like, oh well, this is like an elitist thing, like only certain people get to go and whatever. And Danny was very against that. He was like, if we're going to do this, everyone can come. Like, even if they even if they don't have a badge, even if they're not DC801, even if they're whatever, like everybody has to be allowed to come. And so that was like a core part of the DC801 party from the beginning, was like, it's open to everybody. Doesn't matter like how elite you are or whatever. So
just keep in mind the logistical aspect of allowing everybody.
Oh, it was a shit show. The first
still
year.
is.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So hot.
Every
Just
single
so
one
hot.
of them has been a shit show of its own unique proportions.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a testament too to like people wanting to come out and have a good time and feel like they belong, like, and be with people and have those conversations that Meta was talking about, right? And feel like included. And so, you know, I mean, as much as like now the DC801 party, there's always a point where, you know, we get dual core screaming, you know, fuck the neighbors. It's also, you know, was kind of like fuck the fire code. Put as many people
And
as
the
humanly
security
possible.
who's been bugging us for 3 hours, and
Yeah. But
and you slip $200 under the door of the neighbors so they'd shut up.
Right.
There's
But
a
that's,
story
I mean,
behind that, right? Because the suite we got connected to another normal suite, and we were trying to get that suite, and so some random couple that night decided to stay in that suite while we were throwing the biggest rager we could possibly do in a small luxury suite at Rio. So we were trying desperately to get them to open the door so we could get them a different room and go down and say, hey, we're going to give you a room you can actually sleep in, and then we're going to pay you the money that you know, we're going to pay you money to get you to leave, right? Because we just know this is going to be a nightmare. Well, they refused to open the door the entire night. Obviously, because they must have been terrified. I mean, they must have picked the worst time ever in the worst room, and
they could have had a great time.
Yeah,
they could have come.
When you think about that, think about people pounding on your door trying to get you to leave. You don't think of it as, hey, someone wants me to leave the room. You think of it as someone just pounding on your door and really trying to get into the party. And so we're sitting there trying to politely get them to open the door so we can hand them money and talk to them, and they're just like not having it at all.
Yeah.
So poor
times.
People.
But that was but another thing about some of the parties at DEF CON started to get to the point where they were having like sponsors, like even like the Ninja party, this last, like the NinjaTel phone was paid for by like Facebook or something like that. And so they were getting expensive, right? And so I think, you know, Aline said, or Nemus, like out of pocket cost just for Meta was a couple grand the first year. He was just like, I want to do this huge. And we're like, dude, we don't need to go big on the first one. He's like, no, we're going big on the first one.
Oh yeah, it was like $5 or $6 grand. It was a lot.
It was a lot, right?
It was a couple grand worth of like beer. I mean,
yeah.
But then so that's where the badge, like the badge thing, I think came from just basically saying like, oh, is there a way that like it doesn't have to come out of pocket? Like, does it not have to be paid for?
Yeah.
Well, one, I mean, there was still, it's not like Meta paid for it all by himself. Like other people were still throwing in money, but he was just like, I want it to be so big that he was willing to throw in thousands of dollars. Like, so there was a lot of money thrown into it. It was just like, well, okay, if we do a badge and we sell the badge, that means that you get this awesome badge and it's a cool thing. And then, but another thing that comes from these parties is people think, well, oh, is somebody making money off of it? Are they getting sponsored to do whatever? So now they're pocketing 10 grand or 20 grand. And so after the DC801 party, it was like, whatever money's left over will just go to 801 Labs, right? Because that seems the fairest way to do it. It's like, even people from outside of Utah were buying these badges, and many were, like other countries, people were buying the DC801 badge. And they were helping fund a hackerspace in Salt Lake City, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Danny even, I think, helped fund the badges, because Decaf made badges that year too. I mean, he was like, you know, we have to have a badge, you know, we have to go big. And so he helped fund the badge and start the idea. It was the next year that we're like, okay, we're going to turn the badge production into funding for the party and funding for the hackerspace as well.
Yeah.
I think the first 2 or 3 years we were just hitting break even too. We weren't really generating a whole lot. Most of the funds that came in from the hackerspace were actually from Jeremy's bartending skills during the party. The tips that we got were usually pretty good, and that's I mean, considering all the work on the badge and the party, you know, all that paid for itself, and then all the extra income really came from the tips.
Going full
was
cocktail.
Speedo.
Free
No,
booze,
you
yeah.
bartend in a Speedo and people get down. So
It's true. It's true. Get those tips, son. Get them.
I mean, bartending at the 801 party was a ton of fun, and that was the easiest way to meet everybody at the party. So in terms of just social engagement, like everybody that I wanted to see at DEF CON came up to me and had a very brief interaction. So that was a ton of fun. What year did we do the Pip-Boy badge, the armband? Was that the second year?
Third year, yeah.
Third year, I think.
I just remember, if I'm not mixing years up, that was the year where half of the Black Hat knock staff was building badges instead.
Yeah, like literally building the badges and writing code in the Black Hat knock.
Yeah.
Wow.
The group of us running the Black Hat knock, and then there was the other group that was occupying space at the knock, but they were just trying to get the badges ready.
Just trying to make something workable. But that badge, I think, was the one that really like put the stamp on the DC801 parties, right? That was like people were like, holy crap, they have a wearable piece of electronics like on there. Like again, badge like
you guys have one handy? Does somebody have one?
I don't think I have it in front of me now. It was the thing that made people go like, holy shit, what's that? And I'm telling you, like stuff like that, like the Ninja badges and the DC801 badges and like those early ones really kickstarted the whole badge life thing. Like everybody was like, oh, we have to have something better, cooler, does something different. Yeah, it was just.
So this is year one. You can see there's a bunch of different badges there. And this is the thing about Decaf was he wanted to one-up himself year over year with the
Every
badge
year.
design.
I know. You're like, dude,
And
stop making it harder on yourself.
And so that's what happened. And here's a closer up view of that first badge. And so little toggle stick and a couple of buttons, and you could play Snake and do a couple of things.
So what is that drawn on that badge? Is that a sheep?
Yep.
You know it is.
So what's the story behind the sheep? Like why is there a sheep? Like where did that come
needs
from?
that needs its own video for that.
What is amazing for me?
Oh, there you go. Nemus has it.
Yeah, Nemus has got it. In 2020, Kevin and I are coworkers, and you know, once a month somebody says, "So what's the deal with the sheep?" And I get to hear the story over and over and over.
What you're saying is it needs to be recorded so that you don't have to say it over and over, right, Kevin?
I don't mind hearing it over and over.
So the sheep is not an actual. Well, DC801 got stuck with it for good reason, but it actually started at DEF CON CTF. So DEF CON CTF, the year it was run by DD Tech, it was run by DD Tech for 4 years. And during that time, shenanigans ensued, including one team bringing an inflatable sheep to put on top of the projector just randomly. And so that particular inflatable sheep was actually wearing lingerie and had red lipstick.
Love it.
So it turned into this gag where we're like, okay, well, we can't let this go. And so year over year, and I can't take credit for this because this is actually the DD Tech crew that took this off to a deep end. And I don't know how kid-friendly we want this to be, but I'm gonna show you guys what ended up happening at the DEF CON CTF, and I'm going to regret this in so many ways.
Presentation.
So this is inflatable plush sheep that you'll see on the side say for rectal use only with stickers on them, and there were condoms purchased that actually said "ba equals yes." Okay, so this is how crazy this got at DEF CON. And it was just because when you're running CTF, there's really not too much to do other than just cause more shenanigans. And so this grew over time. And then one of the years, one of the challenges at DEF CON CTF was a robot pen, which turned into like a sheep pen. So a bunch of inflatable sheeps ended up inside of this pen. And that year, I think that pen ended up on stage at closing ceremonies. So what ended up happening was year over year, guess where all of the extra material went? Back to the hackerspace. So we brought it all home because we weren't the ones flying. And so we always threw them in the back of our cars. And next thing you know, there's inflatable sheep showing up at DC801. And that just kind of became the accidental mascot of DC801, which then no one wanted to let go. And so when no one wanted to
The
let
mascot of
go,
one member in particular.
so I don't know how this got associated with me, but for some reason I just happened to like sheep. So
you just took to it, man, like a duck to water.
I did. And so what ended up happening was you don't name your farm animals, but I ended up naming the farm animal, and Decaf and I, I think it was the first year of the party, because what had happened was DD Tech ran CTF from like 17 to 20. And because at that point we had all of the sheet material, DEF CON 21 was the first year of the DC801 party. So naturally what ends up happening, we bring all of the sheep gear. And so you'll end up seeing the sheep on top of the DJ booth at the DC801 party. And so this is essentially where this all started, is this right here. Oh, you can't see Helga right there. Okay, so, and this is how it starts, right? So randomly we just throw inflatable sheep in the room. Well, everyone thinks it's a fun game to start stealing Helga. So every year at the DC801 party, we would end up losing a few Helgas. So it became this thing to like, okay, we're going down to Vegas for DEF CON. We got to stop at the adult superstore, pick up a couple of sheep, and we're good to go. Well, then that turned into, we got to order a bunch of stuff on Amazon because it's easier. And so next thing you know, we just have all of this sheep gear, and somehow everyone keeps saying that I'm the one that's buying it.
It's not you, right?
I'm not. It's not. And
not all of the time.
Not all of the time.
Not all
I mean, he's got his monthly sheep box.
Yeah, he's got the subscribe on Amazon.
Yeah. He gets a claw box once a month, but other than that.
And so we just kept going with the gag, right? And then what ends up happening is you take it a little too far sometimes. And when you're driving down to Vegas, there is a farm, a petting zoo on the way down to Vegas. And so what ends up happening is we take Helga to the petting zoo in Scipio, and you'll see Meta's back here laughing his ass off. This sheep did not react kindly to Helga. And so what ended up happening was we had to tell the poor little girl at the front who was running the booth, this is a scavenger hunt. Sorry. And so it was a scavenger hunt to take a picture with the sheep. We take the sheep in, and that sheep wasn't happy, so we had to get the hell out of there. And so that's kind of what happens is every time we go down to Vegas, something crazy happens with the sheep. And so it just keeps expanding year over year.
Also, Helga's now spent multiple years in the knock, like at the Black Hat knock. So we always have Helga sitting up somewhere in the knock, which just confuses people when they come into like a professional conference and they walk in the knock. And one Lyle's there, which is the other mascot for the hackerspace. And Lyle's sitting in a corner and Helga's sitting off somewhere else. And they're like, why do you have a big gorilla and a inflatable sheep? And we're like, why don't you have a big gorilla and an inflatable sheep? And even Helga came up on stage for a talk that Bart, like Stumper, and I did, like so yeah, she gets around.
So
that's Helga,
Lyle, yeah. That's that really scary looking
yes.
monkey gorilla thing.
Yeah.
So I actually need to know more about Lyle, because almost 6 months ago we about threw it away because nobody knows what it was, and now I'm really concerned we almost made a huge mistake.
Yeah, never ever. Lyle must live on forever. Sometimes I think, has his pants been lost completely at this point?
Yes, and he's leaking goo, like this, like stuff out. And
Lyle lost his pants in the Vegas party one year.
Yeah, we need to do some repairs to Lyle. Take him in for a touch up. But so Lyle was so Meta and I met each other because we worked at Juniper together, Juniper Networks, and the firewall team. One of the guys on the firewall team won Lyle at a Dave and Buster's like thing. We were like at a team event. Brought Lyle back, and he sat on this guy's desk on the firewall team forever, and he was just like this mascot for the firewall team. And then when I left, like Meta eventually left, and like I think like Jeremy said, he was like moved to San Diego for a little while, then he was in Denver for a little while, then he came back to Utah. But when I left Juniper, I was like, what? The guy who originally had him left, and then Meta left, and I was the last one of our crew leaving, and I'm like, I'm taking Lyle. Like, Lyle's coming with me. And so I put Lyle in my trunk, and then one time I was getting something out of my trunk to the hackerspace, and I'm like, oh my, like Lyle scared the hell out of my kids when they were little, as you may, have similar feelings about. Like if you walk in and see Lyle and you're not expecting it, you're like, what in the hell is that?
So the top of stairs is the best spot for him.
So from the beginning of the hackerspace, Lyle hung out in the corner from like almost like a couple months in, and then he's been there for years and years and years. So Lyle's been the hackerspace mascot alongside Helga from the beginning, basically. So.
Kind of like the all right. I always wondered where that scary looking gorilla
well,
came
and then
from.
Nemus is good enough to bring him every year. Nemus drives down to Black Hat because he's on the knock team for Black Hat as well, and he loads him up and brings him down to Vegas. So Lyle has made he's probably the most well-traveled giant stuffed gorilla that's out there, because he has clocked some miles in the years that Nemus has dragged him back and forth, and he comes and hangs out in the knock and hangs out at the DC801 party every year. So yeah.
The difference with Lyle though is that if you lose him, we got a problem.
Yeah, because he's the one and only.
Yeah, we've bought in dozens of
so many Helgas. People want to steal Helga though for some reason. I don't know.
But so Lyle got lost 3 years ago. Someone tried to steal him, and so we actually had to run him down. That wasn't cool. Like, you steal a Helga, okay, we'll go buy a new one. You steal a Lyle, you got a problem.
Where do you get another Lyle? But yeah, so he's been around for a really long time. I mean, like, we're talking at this point, like, as long as I've known Lyle, 14 years or something like that. So
it's the time to wash it. Okay.
Steam clean Lyle. As soon as we can all return back to the hackerspace, I'll make that a project for one of the nights. Is we're gonna clean and sew Lyle back up. Add some
Lyle. It'll be Lyle's day.
Restuff with.
Yeah, we'll wave a palm frond over him and feed him grapes while we take care of him.
Okay, let's get back on topic. So hackerspace is in this small place underground. You finally grow and you decide to move out. Like, what happened there? Do you guys remember?
Like why we wanted to move or what?
Yeah, like how long did it take you to move? How did you choose the new location? What was it like? Because I think the location you moved to is still the place we're currently at right now, right?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We've only been in 2 places, and so
The why was just the need for more space, and then wanting more of a mixed use environment that had the ability to do some projects and some maker type stuff in addition to just the kind of classroom. The other space was really a classroom and an office and just a teeny little bit of storage. So anything beyond that, it wasn't very well suited for.
Right.
So, and then, parking was rough. It wasn't particularly cheap. It wasn't crazy expensive, but it wasn't cheap. And so, I don't know, guys.
Yeah. So I think it was, I think Nemus and I were the ones who really started looking at spaces. It's really expensive to like find usable office space like in downtown.
Yeah, it is.
And we had basically ended up at the point where we had found one place that was, if I'm remembering correctly, Nemus, tell me if I'm wrong, but one place out by the airport. And then the space that we're in now. Well, the thing about the space that we're in now was it was an abandoned building, like legit straight up like an abandoned building. And we saw, like, I think we went to lunch or something because it's only a couple blocks from where the hackerspace is now, and saw a sign up that said like, for lease, and the sign was all faded and janky looking and everything. And I called and talked to the guy, to Dean, who's the landlord now. And he's, and I was just like, is it actually for lease? Like, how much space is there? Like, what is the different spaces? Because we went over and tried to look through windows and stuff, and you couldn't really see anything other than trash, essentially. And he was like, oh yeah, we've got this space. And then he talked about one of the larger spaces, and we're like, all right, can we go see it? And I think it was just Lance and I who went over and saw it the first time. And we were like, oh gosh, like, I mean, it was something else, man. Like, there was like parts of the ceiling were hanging down. There was ductwork hanging, wires hanging from all over the place. There was all this like random abandoned stuff. Apparently it was like
Weird walls everywhere.
yeah, like literally, yeah, like and then
Okay.
and like holes in walls and giant like random crap. And we're like, what even is this? And it's like, turns out like somebody looked up the model number that was on a thing, and it was like a mount for a TV camera. And they were like, oh yeah, this was once a like a Mexican TV studio, like a Spanish speaking TV studio, like very small, whatever. And we're like, what? And there was a room that is now the conference room where the conference table is, was like all walled in, but had a window into where the classroom is. There's that like plexiglass window where someone had like a sound booth, and there was another one on the other side of the space as well that ended up being where the tattoo guys eventually moved in. And there was like an abandoned couch and like paper towels all over the floor, and some like we were grossed out by that.
So you looked at that, you said, yes, this is
We
what
said
we want.
this looks exactly like the kind of thing that we should get. That like essentially what it came down to was the price was right. You know, like we talked to them and they were like, oh yeah, we want X thousands of dollars or whatever. And we're like, dude, this is an abandoned building. And we kind of explained who we were, that we're like a hacker space, and that like what that means, and that we were going to come in and actually improve the space. Like we asked if we could tear down walls, could we paint, what could we do? And they basically said like, yeah, go ahead, do whatever. And we were like, all right, as long as we have running water, I think we're good to go. And electricity. And we literally on move-in day, we knocked down walls. So the larger space in the hacker space had offices, like closed in offices in the center. And we like went in and just like sledgehammered out these freaking walls and tore the whole guts out of the middle of there.
So that's what the concrete strips are in the middle of the floor right now.
The strips on the floor are where walls used to be. And so we ripped out walls so that we could have a big open hangout space. But we looked at the other rooms as like potential. Like we're like, okay, this could be a classroom, this could be a lockpick room, this could be like the hardware hacking space. Like we were super excited about all the potential that it had. And then we just went in and just started tearing stuff up. And then eventually like slowly just painting this or moving that. And like Pope was great because he had like actual skill set. But like in
he had wiring
ductwork, wiring, ductwork
in the ceiling.
Yeah,
and he
so
went and cleaned all that up.
And Pope was new when we got, like, he had just started coming to the space, like, I mean, like, literally it had to be weeks before we moved. And then we move into the new space, and he was like, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this. And we're like, please.
There's a funny story with that, because the day we moved in, we gave everybody cleaning supplies and just said, okay, we're going to spend hours just washing walls, because this place had been empty for years. And so Pope, I had never met Pope at this point. He literally takes stuff and just goes for hours straight. And I remember my wife was there with us cleaning, and she's like, is that guy on drugs? Like, which is hilarious now, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't have any water, didn't have any food, and just went straight for hours. And as he's going through this, he's like, oh yeah, we got a wiring problem, we got some ductwork issues here. And I'm just like, whoa, all right, dude. But yeah, that's kind of what happened, is everyone just showed up and just started cleaning and just started finding stuff to fix. I mean, because the thermostat was broken, I think only one of the AC units was working. The ductwork was wired weird, so we had a huge heating issue. It was
none of the wiring was up to code too. I think that was the thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Pope brought it all up to code. Like he like pulled all the wires into the breaker box and redid everything. And that was like something that, again, like we told the landlord, like we're gonna make this better than it is. And we did, make it better in short order pretty quickly. We fixed some things, but then we would just be like, okay, this room is the next project. We got to clean all the garbage out, haul out the weird camera mounts, rip up this flooring, like the classroom had to be completely torn out and then the floor painted and all that. Like they were just different projects. Like this is going to be the next room. This is going to be the next room. And, just happened slowly but surely. So Yeah, it was a mess though, man. What a hellhole. And not that it's the prettiest space right now, but when the thing is like we kind of felt like, oh, this is like it's not pretty. Don't look directly at it. But then anytime other hackers would come into town, we would love to host them. Right? We'd have come to the hackerspace. Let's hang out. We'd go to dinner and then we'd go to the hackerspace after. And people would walk through and be like, "This is amazing." You know, they're like, "This like." You guys have like a classroom with bookshelves and computers and lock picking stuff and tamper evidence stuff and a laser cutter and all a CNC machine and all the whatever and like all this stuff that they're like, I wish we had this. And we're like, oh,
I guess it is cool,
right?
right?
I guess we should be proud of this, you know. So it's our little corner of happiness, even if it is not great to stare at directly.
So I was looking at some of the documents, and it looks like 801 Labs was founded in 2012, right? What was the
Wow.
yeah,
Say so. Yeah.
that's 8 years now.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was the decision
That was
for founding that?
so Devon closed the transistor. So the transistor kind of did something similar where they moved to a giant warehouse location in Orem.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a really impressive space. They had this huge warehouse, and it had like 2 stories to it, and so it had like a top area and a bottom area, and they had desks and classroom and all kinds of machines, and like even one guy was like building a tiny house inside it. It was such a big warehouse. Like they had a garage you could park, and there's a guy building a tiny house in there.
And it wasn't that tiny of a tiny house. It was a pretty tiny house.
Yeah. Yeah, he pulled in his trailer and started building his tiny house. And so during that time, you know, Decaf was also expanded the transistor in Orem and was running the Salt Lake, and he just kind of hit his breaking point where he was like, it's not going as well as I want. There's not enough funds, you know, and also it kind of comes down to like when people give money, they have this expectation of service and not of giving service, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of demand, like, hey, I'm paying for this. What am I supposed to get for it? You're supposed to support me. You're supposed to be here and do this and manage it and run it. And he just kind of hit his boiling point with people and not having, unrealistic expectations for a community project. And, you know, being decaf, he bit off way more than he could chew, and he kind of hit that focal point. And so he's like, okay, I have to close the transistor. Well, at that point, we were like, well, we want to keep going with the hackerspace. And so Metacortex went through and did all the legal work on LegalZoom to form the LLC that was 801 Labs.
So so even though 2012 shows as when 801 Labs was founded, it was Transistor SLC for 2 years for that. Like,
yeah, at least 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, so the hackerspace in and of itself has probably been around 10, 11 years at this point.
Wow, that's so cool. Cool update. I don't know if you guys know, but we are now a nonprofit.
Yes.
Yeah. So this year, 10 years later, we finally did enough paperwork to make it nonprofit, so we can write off on our taxes our donations, which is super exciting.
That's pretty awesome. I think everybody on here has had strong opinions about that for a very long time. So great work to everybody who did that.
Yeah,
I had strong opinions about that. It would be awesome to do it. I also had strong opinions about that. I had no idea how to do that though.
You and the rest of us, it was, yeah.
So with that, we kind of cheated, and we just asked the community for money, took that money and paid lawyers to do it for us.
There you go.
That's not cheating. That's the right way to do it.
That is the right way to do it. Yeah, I think for a long time, like every penny we had mattered. I think, you know, like that.
Well, it's still that way.
Paying lawyers.
The hard part too was finding the right lawyers, because I talked to numerous amount of lawyers in Salt Lake, and every one of them's like, I want 10 or 15 grand to do the 501c3. And then the lucky thing is Mike Bash here was able to find a group of lawyers, which is the Newfound group, which was able to do the 501c3 paperwork and guide us through it for only like $3,000, which was a huge,
That's a
bill
savings.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would have been an untenable amount for us probably the first 5 years of operation, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Sure.
I remember several times where we were worried about the rent in the old space and how we were covering that, and that was $1,200 or something like that. It was much less. The internet for this first space was in my name and just came to my house for a long time. Just so I would regularly get like the Comcast bill when we first started up the first space. So it was a lot more tight, I think, with what we were spending. We were very conservative.
We still get mail for you from Comcast to this day.
They love their mailing lists.
Well,
I
and then
don't
the
even
internet
live
in
in
the
a state
second.
where Comcast is an option. They're committed to finding me in Utah and selling me something.
Yeah, when we got to the second space, X Mission had given us a Wi-Fi link for quite some time as well, and that was how we were able to get internet connectivity there before, because CenturyLink didn't really have anything into the building at that time. It took them a while to actually get a fiber drop into the building.
That's that point-to-point antenna that's on the roof, right? That's kind of knocked over and not really doing anything right now.
What's funny is I bet if you pointed it, it would still work.
It would still work. I bet it would.
Because X Mission was very, very gracious in their gift towards us, and they always have been. Even some of the community websites that we were trying to build out of the space, they gave us as part of a community support. So very, very.
So what you're saying
helpful.
is we should hook it back up and see what we can do with it.
Yeah, the hard
Yes.
part was making it stable during storms and whatnot, and that's. I mean, we've had internet issues with the space for years, primarily due to lack of equipment or old equipment dying, and then every time we had to hop up on the roof and repoint that antenna, they didn't like when we pulled out the laser to align it. So
Who's they?
it's local police.
That's
Because you're only
also-
pointing at it where it's supposed to go, right? You're not pointing it anywhere else.
If there's
Don't
a
admit
helicopter, if there's
Don't
a
admit
helicopter
anything.
flying around downtown, you cannot point that laser downtown. The problem is you had to point it at one of the, I think it was the Broadway building that you had to point it at. So you're pointing that laser into the center of downtown, and so if anybody's flying around there, that's a problem.
Right.
Especially with it being a 750 milliwatt laser.
Yeah. All right.
So, yep. Also, too, CenturyLink was very kind to us and spent the money digging the fiber into the location.
Into this
Um,
old Mexican
yeah.
abandoned building.
Yeah, they spent. So Steve Fink spent time negotiating with them, and I forgot the other. We had the Black Hat. He was also at Black Hat. So we had nice thing is we had CenturyLink at the Black Hat knock, so we got to talk to them about how terrible the internet connection at the hackerspace was, and so CenturyLink, I think they dropped like $30K on installing the fiber in the hackerspace. So at the time we had gig internet, and it was pretty expensive. I mean, it from that price range, it was going to take them 3 years to recover it, and they considered it as a marketing gift. So it's another thank you to both X Mission and CenturyLink, because without them we wouldn't have a decent internet connection at the hackerspace, or no internet connection at the hackerspace.
That's why you see that the 501c3 is so critical, because without that, getting those handouts from CenturyLink and X Mission was I wouldn't say difficult, but it didn't go easy, because they couldn't use it as a gift or community service.
So, we still have a lot of people coming to the space. So I don't know when you guys were coming what the average attendance was, but before COVID, because everything got screwed, we normally average around 15 to 20 people coming to the space twice a week. Back then
Twice a week.
we were doing events on Tuesday and on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Great.
that's definitely an uptick. We would get the when we had a classroom event, the classroom would usually bring in a lot of people, 20, 30 people, depending on the type of class. When we were doing our quarterly lockpicking events, that would bring in a ton of people, including the local news sometimes.
Oh, speaking of the local news, tell me about that plaque on the wall. Where did that come from? Who's the dude with the unicorn mask?
So that was City
Dr.
Weekly.
Unicorn.
That's a
What
funny
silly
story.
question. That's a doctor.
Yeah. Dr. Unicorn originated at Open West during one of the CTFs.
Awesome.
We're putting on a CTF. Dude walks in a lab coat and a unicorn mask and sits down and just starts playing the CTF, doesn't say a word, sits there for probably 4 or 5 hours, gets up and leaves. And I think he was one of the top scorers. Never met him until he started coming to the space. And we're like, oh, now I remember. And so we had City Weekly out because someone had been tracking Devin for a while and wanted to interview how the Salt Lake Hackerspace kind of came to be. And so the guy came in and did an interview. Interview was what you see on the wall. But what happened was Dr. Unicorn had showed up like right before that happened and didn't know that an interview was taking place that evening, but was still in a lab coat and his mask.
Doing his
and
thing.
So just doing his thing. And that's the thing, is he'd always just show up and he would do cool things and have good conversations. But at this particular instance, he sees a random guy walk in and start asking a bunch of questions, and everyone's getting interviewed. And then the reporter gets up and leaves. And Dr. Unicorn just turns and looks at us and says, "Who's that?" We're like, what? that was a reporter that just interviewed. Oh, okay, cool.
Of course, the reporter chooses the picture of the guy wearing the unicorn hat and put right at the.
Wouldn't you? I mean, yeah, come on.
Absolutely. And Dr. Unicorn went about his business. Not a care in the world.
We've had interviews there too with like KSL or KUTV. Different like local media has come in and done interviews when there's been a breach or something. I know Meta and Nemus and I did one together one time. I've done one solo there before. Like, so it also is just kind of like a good place, when the local media was like, hey, we've got a story about some hack that happened or whatever. Can we talk to someone? It's like, yeah, come by the hackerspace. And they're like, the what? And it's kind of a good way of getting them to realize that this is going on in Salt Lake City.
Yeah. All right. That's pretty cool. I always wondered who the unicorn guy was. I still want to meet Dr. Unicorn now.
He moved.
Well,
yeah, he did some presentations at B-Sides on like electromagnetic like waste, trying to capture like CTR screens that are on, replaying them and stuff like that. So some of that
like
high
Tempest
level
stuff, like
Tempest stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's gangster.
So if you want to get to know, see what it's like to interact with Dr. Unicorn, I think that was recorded and put on YouTube. So there might be some.
Well, now I'm gonna look.
Dr. Unicorn.
I just Googled Dr. Unicorn Tempest and it brings up a My Little Pony video. So I think it's going to take something.
That might be it. Who can say?
He might have done the voiceover.
Anyways, okay. So what are some cool stories that you guys want to share about the Hackerspace? Cool things, cool experiences. I mean, we got Lean's story about the sheep, but I'm sure there's other lovely stories.
Do you guys remember the old logo? I think Kevin, you had it up on one of the banners, the one that looks like graffiti.
Yeah, I did. Oh yeah, that one was funny. Let me pull it up. Let's get a good picture here. Back up. See if you can see this. You see that one in the back?
So that logo came from Vegas. Danny and I were walking down the strip, and we decided that we needed T-shirts. And so we just went into this little shitty store that does T-shirt printing on the fly in Vegas, and it was just this store they sold like cold beer in the front of the store and like lingerie in the middle, and then had a t-shirt printing press in the back.
That's so Vegas. I love it.
Yeah, it's only in Vegas, right? And there was a very drunk, maybe a prostitute, maybe just somebody who was really excited to try on and model lingerie, but she was distracting everybody in the store. And this is part of the story. So it's not just a color, but this woman kept like grabbing different bits of lingerie and then like opening up the changing room door. And so everybody in the store kept turning and looking at her. And Danny and I were trying to get these just a couple of t-shirts printed just because we wanted something that said DC801. It was like one of the first years that we were down there representing. And so we went, I think we made like 10 t-shirts, just like plain white t-shirts. And we're going through, and the guy that was supposed to make the shirts just kind of abandoned us to pay attention to the girl whose, you know, business was falling out and kept opening the door. So while he's gone, we scroll through all the fonts on his computer, and he just flips the computer around and says, "Here, go ahead, and you guys figure it out." I'm like, did you really just hand us your computer?
Do you know who we are?
Do you know what week this is? I think I have that shirt. I'm gonna see. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna disappear.
He didn't, and he didn't. And so, you know, we go through and we pick everything, and he's distracted, and we're getting everything, and like, well, let's make this really easy on ourselves. Grab the font file. We've got our graphic design work done. So we stole that font off the t-shirt printer's computer in Vegas when we initially made that. And that logo lived way, way, way too long because it was about a 30-second decision while the proprietor was distracted with maybe a prostitute. I don't know what she was, but she was a woman very open about her clothing choices, which were minimal.
So I think I have a shirt that has that logo, but it's got like little orange splashes on it. Is that the one you're talking about, or is it just straight up printed?
It's just it's that sort of like stencil looking DC801. So I think the original run of shirts was white with black, and then we made stickers and banners, and that's it. That's one of the OG shirts.
So yeah, that's the first DC801 shirt. And
that is the first DC8.
Oh,
yes. Love it. It's white with black. So switch the colors and I'd buy it. As is, I don't know.
Well, and that was the printing technology available to us, you know, at that exact minute. And I think we probably still paid like $22 a shirt or some ridiculous thing. It was one of Danny and I's just like self-funded random adventures. And I think we made like 8 or 10 of them, and we handed them out to key folks.
It's held up. It's held up, man.
I'm impressed. I think mine's long gone, so I'm impressed.
Hang on.
Don't tell me it's gone. That's sad. It's probably sitting at some Goodwill somewhere now. They don't know what they have.
We did eventually do black shirts and lots of different clothing options and hat options along the way. I still have my fitted hat that says DC801. It says Sobit on the back. Kevin, you still have yours? Do you also still have Ba Means No?
Yeah, but I'm not. That one's downstairs. So I've got, let's see. This one is the DC801 from the strip and only lean. And then this is the new 801 Labs hat.
Yep. That logo's awesome.
I still have the cups too.
By the way, this was
a
second. Yeah, this was a second design. The original design Decaf had started, and this is a variation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yet another thing that Decaf just kind of embedded into 801 Labs. His influence is all over that place.
Oh,
yep.
Sure.
That's lovely.
One story that we must share. Anybody remember this guy?
Yeah, Zebra Man that showed up.
So DC801 party, year 2, year 3, I don't remember. We had gathered quite a group of people in the hallway because we could only have so many people in the room. And so we had this little wait line. I don't know who this guy is to this day. Hops off the elevator, walks right up to the door. No one questions him, walks right in, parties for a little while, and then ends up leaving. Doesn't say a word. Don't know what happened.
Had to
But
rejoin
no
the
one,
herd.
no one questioned him at all. Full zebra
Why
suit.
would you? You just you assume he's with Dr. Unicorn.
You just like, okay, this is 801 party for sure. He's getting in.
You act like one of the guys on this video chat hasn't showed up as a dinosaur a handful of times.
I actually
No,
have that
you're
one
not.
queued up as well. I'll pull that one up in a second.
My favorite social media post was Jason E. Street lamenting that he couldn't dinosaur fight Grifter in the hallway this year. That was his
True.
post tragedy.
Another DC 801 tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we miss you guys. Like I really, so I know that when I started going, I think I met Grifter. I met you once there, and then after that, I never got to see you again. Because I had to go back to school, and when I came back, life gets busy. But Lean, I mean, we saw you a lot, um, but we are so grateful for the super awesome, hackerspace that you guys have made happen for us. Because without all of that work and that risk that you put in, I mean, we wouldn't have anything. Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I would put in that kind of money risk for it. It's just
We were all a lot younger and dumber at the time, so I
Less
think
kids.
yeah, we all had less children for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, I know I've been absent from the space for a while. I mean, I still pay my $75 a month every
oh
month
yeah,
for I don't know how many years, right? But it's just been more like you said, life gets in the way, and I travel so much for work that like I mean, obviously not now, right? But like last year, I clocked 250,000 miles, over 250,000
my
miles.
gosh.
So when I'm home, like my family expects me to be
For
home.
sure. No, oh no. So I'm not like trying
But
to.
no. What I'm saying is like what this has made me realize, what like I think I mean, if you could say that there's a silver lining to the coronavirus and all that, whatever, is it has made me realize how meaningful those connections are and how much not having them has like genuinely affected my mental health. Like where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I miss the space and I miss the guys and I miss like just getting together and like laughing about dumb stuff, or just like sitting down and not knowing somebody across a couch, and within a year that person's like, like at your house, like hanging out with your kids and your family and stuff. Like it's like the friendships and the amount of positivity that the hacker space has brought into my life has been exceptional. And so moving away from that over the last like year and a half or so, like I'm like, oh hey dummy, you should probably fix that. So when we can all get back to the space, you'll see me a lot more, because I genuinely miss you guys.
It's so fun, and I think that people get so much value out of like having that hacker space, and having the ability to, we get a lot of new people like all the time. We're getting new people who've never been into security before, and I think that the environment that you guys built that's still very much there is one of the, I mean, it's so positive, give someone a place to go, to ask questions, to meet people who kind of know what they're doing, kind of don't, and just hang out and see these people. Like for me, I got into the security industry through the hackerspace, and I know that there are many other people who've done the same, and it's all because of the super risky move that you guys made when you decided, fine, we're gonna actually make a building and sign a lease and hope we don't lose all our money and cry about
Well,
it.
at the time, it was more, we want kind of an adult hangout club, an after school club for adults and our friends. But I was going back through a lot of the recent videos from all the cons, and a lot of people who have shared their experiences with DC801 specifically. It was, I don't think any of us started it with the intent of having the impact that it has had. And I don't
Right.
think any one of us have had a direct impact that we think has been substantial. But when you look at the ripple effect of people showing up to the hackerspace, getting a job by just sitting and talking to people, and then they go and teach other people, the compounding that effect of what has happened in the community for the past decade is amazing.
Yeah.
And I like to attribute as much of that as possible to the way Decaf ran the transistor, and how he motivated everybody, because that's how I got into even looking into
Yeah.
DEF CON and trying to meet up with these guys was really
Also,
just into decaf.
Danny, I mean, Metacortex. It's a real shame that he isn't here. There were times back in the Charlie Square space that it was just me and him, and I looked at him like, we don't have enough money for next month. You know, we're doing an event and nobody showed up, and I was like, should we shut this down? I'm like, I think it's time. You know, the numbers don't look good, the prospects don't look good, and you know, I don't think people want this. And he's like, no, I don't care. I'm going to do it. We're going to do this. I'm like, okay, as long as I've got you, you know, committed, then I'm in. I just don't want to be the only, you know, things look bad. And he says, I don't care. He just says, we'll figure it out. And so if it wasn't for Danny, you know, and all the work that he put into it, Metacortex did, the hackerspace wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I wish he was here because I think he could add a lot of color to the, you know, initial story and stuff too. And it was like, again, you know, it's that like blind faith, you know, and also, I mean, I think that also just comes with being a lot younger, like
More
at the time for him, single with no kids and stuff like that, right? So
Well, I think Decaf could have talked us all into donating kidneys if he.
That's true.
Decaf is
That's true.
very, very charismatic and persuasive.
Yeah.
Well, he'd be the type of person that would talk about it and then come back from the bathroom and throw his kidney on the ground and say, you're next.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think
we're really doing this?
I think one of the biggest things that got me was years ago, I was sitting at the space and there was only a few of us there. It wasn't like a particular event night or anything. It was just kind of like people getting together, hanging out. I think that's kind of the what's fun about the space too, is there are days where like there aren't any real project like that may specifically be going on or a specific class or whatever, but you could just go and show up and see who was there, and that was really nice. But one of the members said to me like, hey, like thanks for like doing this. And I'm like what? He's like, the space, like thanks for like doing the like creating this, because I've never belonged anywhere. And he's like, and basically like most of my life I've had no friends. Like, and when I initially came out to this space for the first time, I didn't have any friends. And he's like, and it took a lot for me to like get out of my comfort zone and come not knowing anyone. And now I have all these friends and we do all these cool things. And we all go to Vegas together every summer and we do all this stuff. And it's like completely changed my life. And I'm like, what? What? And I'm like, what an incredibly like, I don't know, like what an awesome thing to come from just giving people somewhere to go where other people know what they're talking about or understand them, you know, like where you're not weird for whatever your hobby is, despite how obsessive you are about sheep, you know, we'll still accept you. So, you know, like, but yeah, I think that like those types of things, that one was the most direct I've had other people say, like, I've never been a part of a group like this, or I've never had a friend group like this. And so being able to like see that and be part of that, you know, like hopefully that gets me into heaven or something, because I tell you, my life's not.
If you look at our close group of friends and people who are in the community, the jobs that they hold today would not exist or be possible had they not connected at the hackerspace or in the DC801 group. I had never met Lance, ended up working with him for a little while, ended up hiring a couple people from the hackerspace. I now work with Jeremy after almost a decade of working with him in 801. And so the friendships and the bonds that I have built personally is what really drives me to keep the community alive. And I feel like I haven't done anything in like 4 years. And so the fact that it still exists is really exciting, because that just means that other people value it as much as I originally did. And selfishly, why I wanted to get the hackerspace started was I wanted to absorb, you know, everybody around me, because they had better jobs or more skills or more talents. And I just wanted to say, you know what, I'm just going to sit next to you for long enough until I just absorb it. And now today I feel somewhat accomplished by being able to call these guys friends and work with them and actually enjoy working with them. even through some very, very difficult 3 a.m. visits when the knock is on fire and you don't have internet the day before classes are supposed to start.
True that.
Okay, well, we're actually hitting about an hour and 20 minutes. So
Awesome.
I am
So we got another 3 hours, right?
right, exact. No, I'm hungry, so
Yeah,
I've got to
me
let you
too.
guys go. But I
Yes.
am really grateful for being able to talk to you guys today. Thank you. If you want to hang out, we've got our Slack and our IRC channel. We'd love to see you around.
Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.